That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Joint Base Lewis McChord, casting long shadows across the parade grounds, where the 1st Special Forces Group prepared for their quarterly readiness drill. Master Sergeant Elias Kane adjusted the strap of his tactical vest, the weight familiar against his shoulders as he scanned the formation. At 38, Kane had logged over a decade with the Green Berets, his face etched with the quiet lines of missions in distant sands and mountain passes, but today was stateside routine. No live fire, just precision maneuvers to sharpen the edge. Beside him, Rex, his Belgian Malinois partner, sat at heel, ears pricked forward, black eyes alert to every shift in the air. The dog's coat gleamed under the morning light, his harness marked with the unit's insignia. Rex was no ordinary asset. He was Kane's shadow, trained in detection and patrol, capable of picking up scents humans couldn't dream of. Their bond had formed in the chaos of a deployment in Afghanistan, where Rex's nose had saved the team from an IED ambush. Now, back home, they moved as one, Kane's hand resting lightly on Rex's head, a silent affirmation of trust. "Fall in, Alpha Team!" Lieutenant Colonel Harlan Graves barked from the reviewing stand, his voice cutting through the low hum of idling Humvees. Graves was a stickler for protocol, his career built on unyielding adherence to the chain of command. The base sprawled across Washington's evergreen foothills, a self-contained world of barracks, armories, and family housing quarters. Soldiers snapped to attention, boots thudding in unison on the packed earth. The air carried the sharp tang of pine and diesel, mingled with the faint salt of Puget Sound a few miles west. Kane took his place in the line, Rex settling without a sound. The drill commenced with standard procedure, obstacle courses to test endurance, then a simulated blackout scenario to drill emergency protocols. Power failures were a real threat in forward operating bases, and the exercise mimicked one. Lights out, comms disrupted, forcing reliance on backup systems and instinct. "Maintain formation," Graves ordered over the bullhorn. "No deviations. This is about discipline under stress." As the klaxons blared, simulating the outage, the base plunged into controlled darkness. Floodlights snapped off, leaving only the dim glow of emergency beacons along the paths. Teams dispersed to assigned sectors, Kane and Rex heading toward the perimeter near the family housing units. Civilian dependents lived there, spouses, children, separated from the operational core by chain-link fences and protocol. Military life blurred those lines, but orders kept them distinct, focus on the mission, not the domestic fringe. Halfway through the drill, a cry pierced the simulated chaos. It came from the edge of the housing area, where a cluster of young families had gathered for a base picnic, now interrupted by the exercise. Kane paused, his radio crackling with static. "All clear in Sector 5, a voice reported, but the cry lingered. A woman's voice, sharp with panic. "Sir, that's coming from the playground," Private Ruiz, Kane's junior handler, said, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. "Stay on task," Kane replied, voice steady. Protocol dictated ignoring civilian disturbances during drills. Base security would handle it. But Rex whined low, his nose twitching toward the sound. The dog's instincts were sharper than any order, tuned to anomalies in scent and sound. They pressed on, navigating the mock blackout path, when the base-wide alert shifted tone. Over the speakers, a new announcement. "All personnel, stand by. Report of a missing child in family sector. Non-essential drills suspended." Kane's pulse quickened, but he kept formation, leading Rex through the underbrush toward their checkpoint. The playground was just off their route, a swing set and sandbox ringed by modular homes, now shrouded in twilight. As they approached, the scene unfolded. A mother, Sergeant Lara Voss, knelt by a picnic blanket, her face pale under the emergency lights. Her toddler, 3-year-old Mia, had vanished in the confusion of the Blackout simulation. The child had been playing near the edge of the grass, chasing a ball when the alarms sounded. In the dark, she was gone. "Ma'am, when did you last see her?" Captain Ellis, the base security officer, asked, his notepad illuminated by a red lens flashlight. A handful of soldiers and spouses milled nearby, their voices a murmur of concern. The air felt heavier now, the pine scent undercut by the acrid whiff of extinguished grill coals. 2 minutes ago, maybe 3, Voss stammered, her uniform blouse rumpled from the frantic search. She was a logistics specialist, her husband deployed overseas. Mia was her anchor in the isolation of base life. "She was right here. The lights went out and she's afraid of the dark." Ellis nodded, dispatching a team to sweep the immediate area. "We'll find her. Standard procedure, grid search, no panic." But doubt flickered in his eyes. The housing sector backed onto a wooded trail, dense with ferns and fallen logs, where a child could slip away unseen. Kane lingered at the perimeter, Rex straining against his lead. The dog's nose worked the air, nostrils flaring. "Easy, boy," Kane murmured, but he felt the pull too. The unspoken tension between duty and the human pull of the moment. Graves' voice crackled over the radio. "K9 units, report to primary assembly. Drills resume in 10. Yet Rex pawed the ground, a low rumble in his throat. Kane crouched, letting the leash slacken. The dog's focus locked on a faint trail leading into the trees, where the Blackout's shadows deepened. No one else noticed. The search teams fanned out with lights and calls, but Rex sensed something else. A trace, elusive, like smoke on the wind. "Master Sergeant," Ellis called, spotting them. "Your dog got a hit?" Kane hesitated. Orders were clear. Return to station. Civilians weren't their jurisdiction. Security had protocols. But Mia's toy ball lay abandoned on the grass, its bright plastic a stark contrast to the encroaching dusk. Rex's whine grew insistent, his body taut with purpose. "Negative, sir," Kane said finally, though his hand tightened on the lead. He turned toward the assembly point, the weight of the choice settling like dew on his boots. The base hummed back to life around them, radios buzzing, footsteps echoing, but in that moment, the line between obedience and instinct blurred, and Kane wondered if Rex had already crossed it. The drill would end soon, lights flickering back on. But the real test was just beginning. In the rigid world of ranks and routines, one missing child and a dog's unerring nose threatened to upend it all. Kane's boots crunched softly on the gravel path as he led Rex away from the playground, the dog's reluctance evident in the tension along his leash. The assembly point lay a quarter-mile east, past the motor pool where Humvees idled with muffled rumbles, their headlights cutting pale swathes through the lingering dusk of the simulated blackout. Overhead, the first stars pricked the Washington sky, indifferent to the base's controlled frenzy below. Kane's mind replayed the scene. Voss's wide eyes, the abandoned ball, Rex's unyielding focus on that shadowed trail. Protocol was etched into him like the ink of his dog tags. K9 units supported operational security, not domestic searches. But the whine in Rex's throat lingered in his ears, a counterpoint to the radio's steady chatter. "Alpha Team, consolidate at Grid Alpha 1, Graves' voice directed, crisp and unyielding. Kane acknowledged with a double click on his handset, quickening his pace. The air cooled as they moved, carrying the damp earthiness of the forest edge, mingled with the faint metallic tang of the base's water towers. Soldiers passed them in pairs, flashlights bobbing like fireflies, their murmurs low. "Kid's probably just hiding," one said. "Blackout spooked her," another replied. No one mentioned the woods, that tangled stretch of Douglas fir and undergrowth that buffered the housing from the wilder acres beyond. At the assembly, the team formed up under portable floodlights that had snapped on with the partial resumption of drills. Graves paced the front, his polished boots gleaming, clipboard in hand. Debrief in 5. Security's handling the civilian matter. Our focus remains readiness. His gaze swept the ranks, pausing on Kane. Master Sergeant, status on Rex? All clear, sir, Kane reported, standing at attention, Rex sitting rigidly beside him. The dog's ears flicked toward the distant playground, but Kane kept his hand firm on the harness. Loyalty to the unit came first. Questioning orders in the open invited scrutiny, and Kane's record, flawless through 3 deployments, wouldn't withstand idle doubt. Graves nodded, moving on to Ruiz. Private, log the patrol route. Any anomalies? Negative, Colonel. Perimeter secure. Ruiz's voice was steady, but his eyes darted to Kane, a silent question hanging between them. As the debrief dragged, reviews of timing, formations, minor lapses in comms, Kane's thoughts drifted to Mia, 3 years old, small enough to slip through the chain-link gaps, fragile in the chill night air. He'd seen it before, in villages overseas, children vanishing into the dust, their absence a hollow ache that no amount of training filled. Rex shifted, his nose lifting again, catching something faint on the breeze. Kane murmured, "Steady," under his breath, but the dog's body language spoke volumes, tail low, muscles coiled, as if scenting a threat beyond the visible. The meeting broke with orders to stand down for the evening, barracks lights flickering back to full power across the base. Kane released Rex's harness in the kennel annex, the space a utilitarian row of wire runs lit by harsh fluorescence. The other handlers busied themselves with logs and feed, the routine a balm against the day's disruption. "Good work today, boy," Kane said, running a hand along Rex's flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of his ribs. The dog's eyes met his, dark and knowing, a bond forged in silence over years of shared risks. In Afghanistan, Rex had detected the explosive residue before the team breached a compound. Stateside, he patrolled with the same vigilance, his world reduced to sense and loyalty. But as Kane latched the run, his radio buzzed again, not the standard all clear, but an urgent patch from base security. Kane, report to family sector. Captain Ellis requests K9 support. Child still missing. Search expanding. He paused, glancing at the clock. 20-30 hours. Drills were over. This was off protocol, a civilian pull on military resources. Graves would frown on it. Diverting assets without chain approval risked logs and reprimands. Yet Ellis's tone carried weight, the kind that bypassed red tape in moments like these. Kane clipped Rex's lead, the click echoing in the quiet annex. "Let's go, partner." They moved swiftly through the base's veins, past the mess hall where late-shift cooks scraped pans, the scent of reheated MREs wafting out, along sidewalks slick with evening dew, boots leaving faint prints. The playground came into view, now cordoned with yellow tape under portable spots. Voss sat on a bench, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, flanked by 2 MPs. Her face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed, but she straightened as Kane approached. "Master Sergeant," Ellis greeted, his uniform jacket unbuttoned against the cooling air. "Appreciate you coming. We've gridded the open areas. No sign. Woods are next, but it's dense. Rex up for it?" Kane nodded, unclipping the lead to let Rex work free. "He's ready, sir." The dog immediately quartered the grass, nose to the ground, methodically tracing Mia's last path, the picnic spot, the ball, then the trail's edge. Soldiers watched from the perimeter, their flashlights held low to avoid blinding him. The night deepened, crickets chirping in the underbrush, the distant thump of a helicopter rotor fading into the hills. Rex hit the trail at a point 20 yards in, pausing to air scent, then plunging forward with purpose. Kane followed, calling back, "He's got a track, faint but holding, branches snagged at their sleeves, the path narrowing to a single file of ferns and mossy logs." Ellis trailed with 2 MPs, radios hushed to preserve the dog's focus. The air grew thicker here, laced with pine resin and damp soil, but Rex pushed on, his pace quickening at a cluster of boulders. Then, abruptly, he stopped, Nose lifted high, Rex whined sharply, circling a low outcrop sheltered by overhanging limbs. Kane knelt, scanning the ground. No footprints, no fabric scraps, but the dog pawed insistently, his body language screaming alert. "What is it, boy?" Kane murmured, letting Rex lead. A faint odor registered, not the child's scent, but something anomalous. Wax, perhaps, or char. Rex's training covered explosives, narcotics, but he'd adapted to anomalies in the field, odors that didn't belong. Kane leaned closer, inhaling. There it was, a trace of smoke, subtle, like a snuffed candle carried on the wind. Not from a campfire. Too clean, too contained. In the blackout's confusion, who would light one here? "Ellis," Kane called softly. "He's locked on something non-standard. Smoke trace, possible shelter or hide." The captain pushed forward, flashlight beam dancing over the rocks. "Copy, mark it, we'll call in EOD if needed." But his voice held a new edge. Protocol allowed K9 for searches, but this veered into investigation. Graves would hear of it by morning, and Kane knew the questions. Why deviate? Whose authority? Voss's voice broke from the trailhead, distant but piercing. "Did you find her?" Hope and fear tangled in the words, pulling at Kane like the leash in his hand. Rex sat, staring into the crevice between boulders, his detection complete. Kane's hand rested on the dog's head, a steadying touch amid the uncertainty. The base's lights twinkled behind them, a reminder of the ordered world waiting. But here, in the shadows, instinct had led them to a secret the darkness hid. The choice loomed larger now: report the hit and risk the chain's scrutiny, or pull back and let security take the lead. As the MPs secured the site, Kane felt the weight of it settle, the first crack in the routine that no drill could prepare for. The crevice between the boulders yawned like a hidden fracture in the earth, its edges jagged with moss and lichen under the MP's flashlight beams. Kane held Rex steady, the dog's flanks heaving from the track, his nose still questing at the air's edge. The scent lingered, faint, acrid, unmistakable now to Kane's trained senses. Not wildfire or exhaust, but the clean burn of paraffin wax, extinguished recently enough to cling to the damp stone. In the blackout's disarray, a candle made no sense out here, away from the base's grid. "Secure the perimeter," Ellis ordered, his voice low but authoritative, gesturing to the two MPs who fanned out with thermal imagers. The devices hummed softly, their screens casting green glows on their faces as they scanned for heat signatures. Kane crouched lower, peering into the narrow gap, Rex whining beside him. The dog's paw scraped again, insistent, as if urging him deeper. Protocol for off-duty K9 work was clear: detect, mark, defer to specialists. But this felt like more than a lost child's trail. Rex's alerts had layers, built from years of discerning threat from anomaly. "Captain," one MP reported, "thermals picking up nothing inside. Could be a fox den or runoff shelter." Ellis nodded, but his brow furrowed. "Kane, can Rex confirm? Any escalation in the scent?" Kane unclipped a small sample kit from his vest, standard issue for field verification, and let Rex sniff a sterile swab dragged along the rock. The dog sat immediately, a trained signal for positive match, his eyes locking on Kane with that unwavering trust. "Affirmative, sir. It's holding strong. Not explosive or chem, but deliberate. Someone lit something in there, recent." Voss's voice echoed from the trailhead, closer now, accompanied by the crunch of approaching boots. "Sergeant Kane? Is that Mia?" She pushed past a security barrier, her blanket trailing, eyes wide in the erratic light. Ellis stepped forward to intercept, but she halted at the sight of Rex, hope flickering across her face. "Your dog. He knows, doesn't he? Please just check." Kane exchanged a glance with Ellis. Civilian involvement complicated things. Dependents weren't cleared for search sites, especially if this veered into potential criminal territory. "Ma'am, stand back," Ellis said firmly. We're handling it. But Voss didn't retreat. Her hands clasped tight, the weight of isolation evident in her posture. Husband overseas, now this void in the night. As the MPs wedged a probe light into the crevice, Kane's radio crackled to life. "Kane, this is Graves. Report your position. You're off-grid. Explain." The lieutenant colonel's tone was steel, laced with the edge of command scrutiny. The base's clock ticked past 2100 hours. Drills had concluded, and K9 assets were to log out clean. "Family sector trail, sir," Kane replied, keeping his voice even. "Security requested support for the missing dependent. Rex has a non-standard alert, possible evidence site." A pause stretched, filled only by the rustle of leaves and Rex's soft pant. "Negative on that. Security's lead is Ellis. K9 defers unless tasked through channels. Return to kennels. Now." Kane's jaw tightened, the order landing like a boot on gravel. He'd anticipated pushback. Diverting military resources for a civilian search without prior approval risked his eval. Maybe more. Rex shifted beside him, sensing the tension, his head bumping Kane's knee in silent solidarity. The bond was wordless, forged in patrols where hesitation cost lives. Rex didn't question. He acted on what he knew. "Copy, sir," Kane acknowledged, but he didn't move. The probe light revealed more. Inside the crevice, a shallow cavity, no deeper than a crawl space, scattered with pine needles and a stub of wax, half melted, its wick charred black. Beside it a scrap of fabric, pink, child-sized, snagged on a root. Mia's shirt. The MPs extracted it carefully, bagging it for forensics. "Captain Ellis," the lead MP said, "this isn't natural. Looks like someone hunkered here, lit a light to wait out the dark. But why?" Ellis's face hardened. "Bag it all. Alert CID, could be a runaway attempt or worse." His eyes met Kane's. "Master Sergeant, your call on the dog, if he tracks further." Kane nodded, releasing Rex with a hand signal. The dog circled the site, nose low, then veered upslope along a faint game trail, his pace deliberate. Voss followed at a distance, her presence a quiet pressure. The woods thickened here, ferns brushing their legs, the air heavy with night-blooming damp. Kane's mind raced, Graves' order echoed, but the fabric scrap burned in his thoughts, a child's fear hidden in shadow. Obeying meant stepping back, letting protocols grind through reports and weights. Defying meant crossing into the grey, where conscience clashed with career. They crested a low rise, the base's perimeter fence glinting 50 yards ahead, interrupted by a service gate. Rex alerted again, sitting sharp at a cluster of bushes. Kane parted the branches. There, half buried in leaves, a small backpack, civilian faded blue, zipper ajar. Inside, a juice box, crayons, and a child's drawing. Stick figures under a yellow sun. No explosives, no threat, but the implications twisted. Someone had brought Mia here, used the blackout as cover. "Ellis, we've got a secondary site," Kane radioed, voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "Civilian pack, possible abduction markers." Graves' voice cut in immediately, overriding. "Kane, stand down. That's an order. Security takes possession. K9 clears out." The line went silent, but the damage rippled. MPs arrived in minutes, vehicles rumbling up the trail, their lights flooding the scene. Voss gasped at the backpack collapsing to her knees. Witnesses gathered, other handlers. A few night shift patrols drawn by the commotion. Whispers spread. Kane's dog found it, pushed against orders. The chain of command flexed, visible now in the flood of protocols. Logs updated, perimeters locked. Kane leashed Rex the click final as Ellis clapped his shoulder. "You did right, Sergeant, but Graves, he'll want a full brief." As they trudged back, the base's lights steady against the sky, Kane felt the fracture widen. Rex trotted close, his warmth an anchor amid the scrutiny. One act, pursuing the scent, had pulled the routine into question, forcing the institution to confront what orders couldn't scent, a child's hidden peril and the cost of ignoring it. Dawn would bring the reckoning, but for now, the woods held their secrets, and Kane's choice echoed in the quiet steps home. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The floodlights from the arriving MPs cast stark shadows across the game trail, turning the underbrush into a lattice of light and dark. Kane stood back as the team processed the backpack, gloved hands lifting it carefully onto an evidence tarp spread over the damp earth. Rex sat at his heel, ears perked to the rustle of plastic bags and the low murmur of radio traffic. The dog's nose twitched occasionally, as if still parsing the layered scents, the sweet tang of spilled juice from the pack, the faint chemical edge of crayons, and that persistent undercurrent of wax smoke trailing from the crevice below. Kane's hand rested on Rex's harness, a grounding touch amid the swelling activity. The base's night perimeter hummed with response, sirens distant but closing, the thump of rotors suggesting a helo on standby for potential air search. Ellis coordinated with the lead investigator, a CID agent named Harlan, who arrived in an unmarked SUV, his civilian coat ill-fitting over a tactical vest. "Timeline's tight," Harlan said, his voice clipped, eyes scanning the site. "Blackout at 1800 hours, child missing by 1815. This pack looks like it was prepped. No ID but the drawing. Family motif matches Voss's unit patch." He nodded toward the sketch inside. Stick figures in fatigues under a sun that could pass for the base insignia. Voss hovered at the edge of the cordon, an MP gently but firmly holding her back, her breaths shallow in the cooling air. Kane watched her, the mother's silhouette etched against the fence lights, a reminder of the human stakes protocol, often sidelined. He'd faced similar in the field, villagers pleading for lost kin amid ops, but stateside the lines were sharper, careers on the line with every deviation. Graves's order replayed in his mind, "Stand down." Yet Rex's alert had yielded this tangible evidence that security's grid search might have missed in the dark. The dog shifted, bumping Kane's leg, his dark eyes reflecting the scene's tension. Their partnership was built on such instincts. Rex didn't pass ranks or reports, he tracked truth. "Master Sergeant Kane," Harlan called, approaching with a notepad. "Walk me through the track. Dog's lead?" Kane recounted it methodically. The initial whine at the playground, the trail to the crevice, the swab confirmation, then the upslope, veer to the pack. No embellishment, just facts, distances in meters, wind direction noted for scent dilution. Rex's signals time-stamped against his watch. Harlan jotted notes, his pen scratching like dry leaves. "And the Colonel's pullback order? You acknowledged, but proceeded." "Affirmative, sir," Kane replied, gaze steady. "Captain Ellis had operational lead on the search. Rex's hit escalated priority. Child safety overrides in exigent circumstances." It was a fine line. Doctrine allowing K9 discretion in life-threatening scenarios, but Graves' direct command complicated it. Ellis shot Kane a sidelined glance, supportive yet wary. He'd back the play in briefings, but the fallout would land on Kane first. As the team bagged the pack for transport, a low rumble built from the east, the base's command vehicle, a blacked-out Suburban with tinted windows. Graves emerged, uniform impeccable even at this hour, flanked by his XO, Major Lynn. The air thickened with unspoken hierarchy, soldiers straightening instinctively as the colonel strode forward. "Captain Ellis," Graves said, voice level but resonant. "Debrief, now." Ellis saluted, launching into the sequence. Missing child, K9 request, finds at crevice and secondary site. Graves listened without interruption, his eyes flicking to Kane and Rex midway. When Ellis finished, the colonel turned. "Master Sergeant, your involvement was unauthorized post-drill. Explain the override." Kane met the gaze, boots planted firm on the trail's mulch. "Sir," Rex detected the anomaly independently. "Deferring risked evidence degradation, per FM 3-19. 4. K9 units execute on positive alerts in search ops." He cited the field manual precisely, years of study backing his words, but the moral undercurrent pulled harder. Mia's face, imagined in the dark, trumped paper trails. Graves' expression remained impassive, the floodlights hollowing his cheeks. Doctrine guides soldier, but chain of command directs. This veers into CID jurisdiction, civilian matter with potential implications. Your actions, while yielding results, set precedent. Expect a formal inquiry at 0800. He paused, glancing at Rex, who held still under the scrutiny. The dog's effective, no question, but loyalty flows up, not around. The words landed with quiet force, a reminder of the institution's spine, ranks preserved order, even when instinct bent it. Kane saluted. "Understood, sir." But inside, the dilemma churned. Defiance had uncovered leads, but at what cost? Whispers from the perimeter grew, handlers murmuring to patrols. Kane pushed back. Saved the kid's trail, maybe. Witnesses multiplied. The incident rippling beyond the woods into barracks gossip by Reveille. Harlan stepped in, diffusing. "Colonel, the finds accelerate the case. Fabric matches the child's description. Smoke trace suggests intentional concealment during blackout. We're pulling CCTV from housing gates. Might tie to an insider." Graves nodded curtly, authorizing extended K9 if cleared, then retreated to his vehicle. The engine's growl fading into the night. Voss approached as the tension eased, her eyes on the bagged pack being loaded. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Rex." He didn't stop. Her voice cracked slightly, but she held composure, a soldier's restraint masking the vulnerability. Kane nodded, Rex leaning into her offered hand, his wet nose brushing her palm, a rare allowance. The dog's empathy bridging what words couldn't. "Ma'am, we'll keep on it," Kane said simply. She retreated with an MP escort, the blanket trailing like a shadow. The site cleared methodically. Tarps folded, lights doused, leaving the trail to reclaim its quiet. Kane led Rex back toward the kennels, the fence lights guiding their path, dew slicking the grass underfoot. The base settled. A distant bugle signaling lights out, but sleep felt distant. Inquiry loomed, statements, reviews, perhaps a reprimand staining his file. Yet Rex's steady trot beside him affirmed the choice. Conscience over convenience, even if it invited the system's gaze. By the motor pool, Ruiz waited, leaning against a Humvee, thermos in hand. "Heard the comms, Sarge. You all right?" His junior's concern was genuine, eyes on Rex as if the dog held the answers. "Fine, Private. Log the track for morning brief." Kane clapped his shoulder, the gesture brief, mentor to mentee. In the ranks, such moments built quiet legacies, teaching not just procedure, but the nuance of right amid orders. Rex whined softly, sensing the shift, his bond with Kane a mirror to the larger trust tested tonight. Dawn crept over the foothills as they reached the annex, the first birdsong piercing the hush. The inquiry would probe, witnesses testify, but the scent Rex had chased lingered in Kane's mind, a candle's smoke in blackout, hinting at shadows within the wire. The base's order held, but one handler's stand had cracked it open, forcing light into the hidden folds. Tomorrow's sun would reveal more, and with it the true measure of loyalty. The first light of dawn filtered through the kennel annex's narrow windows, painting the wire runs in pale gold. Kane rose before Reveille, his bunk in the handler's quarters still carrying the faint chill of the night air. Rex stirred in his run as Kane approached, the dog's tail thumping softly against the concrete floor, a ritual greeting that cut through the base's awakening hum. Outside, the foothills stirred with mist, the distant call of a Reveille bugle echoing off the barracks. Kane clipped on Rex's lead, the leather worn smooth from years of use, and headed for the chow hall. Routine held firm, even as the inquiry loomed like a gathering storm. Breakfast was sparse. Oatmeal and black coffee in paper cups, served under the fluorescent buzz of the mess tent. Handlers clustered at long tables, their conversations low and measured, boots scraping on the linoleum. Ruiz slid in across from Kane, his tray clattering down. "Morning briefs at 700, Sarge. Word is CID's pulling logs from the Blackout sim. Graves wants full accountability." His eyes flicked to Rex, who settled under the table, nose to the floor, ignoring the scents of bacon and eggs. Kane nodded, stirring his coffee without tasting it. "Standard. We stick to facts. Rex's alerts, timestamps, nothing more." But the weight pressed. The crevice's wax stub, the backpack's contents, all bagged and en route to the forensics lab at Fort Lewis proper. Harlan's initial assessment overnight had flagged anomalies. The drawings patch suggested base familiarity, the juice box a common PX brand. No prints yet, but the candle smoke implied deliberation, someone exploiting the drill's chaos to stage a grab. Mia remained missing, security sweeps yielding only echoes in the woods. At 0700 sharp, the team assembled in the operations briefing room, a windowless space lined with maps and digital displays flickering to life. Graves stood at the head, his uniform starched, flanked by Major Lynn and Harlan, who projected slides on the wall. Timelines, site photos, Rex's track overlaid on satellite imagery. The room smelled of fresh coffee and marker ink, chairs creaking as 20-odd personnel, handlers, security, a few medics filled in. Kane took a rear seat, Rex at his feet, the dog's presence a quiet anchor amid the scrutiny. "Incident overview," Graves began, his pointer tapping the screen. "Dependent missing during drill 18-00 yesterday. K9 involvement yielded 2 sites. Primary crevice with burn residue, secondary upslope with civilian effects potentially linked to the child." His gaze swept the room, lingering on Kane. Captain Ellis authorized initial support. Subsequent actions deviated from post-drill stand-down. "Master Sergeant Kane, your statement." Kane rose, voice steady as he recounted the sequence again. Rex's initial whine, the swab positive, the override rationale per exigent protocols. He kept it procedural. Wind at 5 knots northwest, scent persistence at 80% confidence, no speculation on intent. Harlan interjected with questions, probing the defiance. Colonel's order at 20:45. Why proceed 200 meters further? Kane met his eyes. "Alert escalated, sir. Child endangerment in progress. Deferral risked dissipation." Murmurs rippled through the room. Nods from handlers, furrowed brows from command staff. Ruiz shifted beside him, a subtle show of support. Graves cut in, "Appreciated. But chain integrity is non-negotiable. This isn't the sandbox. Stateside ops demand precision, not improvisation." The words hung, a formal rebuke wrapped in doctrine, yet Kane sensed the undercurrent. Results spoke, even if grudgingly. Forensics prelims confirmed the fabric scrap as cotton blend matching Mia's described outfit. Trace fibers from the backpack linking to a base laundry tag. Civilian contractor series. As the brief wrapped, Harlan pulled Kane aside in the corridor, the linoleum echoing their steps. "Good work with the dog, Sergeant." Smoke analysis came back. Paraffin from a standard votive, extinguished manually around 1810. Not random. Someone planned a low-light holdout. His voice dropped. "CCTV caught a shadow at the housing gate pre-blackout. Male, mid-40s, maintenance coveralls. Matches a profile, disgruntled ex-spouse with access. We're detaining him this morning." Kane absorbed it, Rex pressing close, sensing the shift. The suspect. Petty Officer Harlan Tate, a former base electrician, divorced from a sailor in Voss's unit. Barred from family quarters, but known to linger during events. Blackout provided cover, candle for visibility in the crevice, backpack to lure or carry Mia. motive tangled in custody disputes, resentment festering within the wire. "Rex track him?" Kane asked. Harlan nodded. "If cleared. But Graves is cautious. Public leak could spin this as security lapse. The base's insularity amplified risks. One story to the local press, and it ballooned. Headlines on vulnerabilities, inquiries from higher. Kane's role, once routine, now spotlighted the friction. K9 as force multiplier, yet leashed by command. By mid-morning, the detention unfolded at the MP station, a squat building near the main gate, its windows barred against the climbing sun. Kane and Rex were tasked, cleared via Ellis's channel, to scent-confirm the suspect's vehicle, parked in the impound lot under camouflage netting. The air carried the bite of asphalt heating up, mingled with the salt of distant sound. Tate sat in holding, his face gaunt under interrogation lights, denying everything. "Wasn't me, just walked the fence line." Rex worked the SUV methodically, nose-tracing tires, undercarriage, then alerting sharp at the rear cargo mat, same wax trace, layered with child sweat and fabric softener. Kane marked it, the swab positive, drawing a low growl from the dog. Harlan watched from the lot's edge, radioing confirmation. "Match to crevice residue. Solid, Sergeant." Word spread fast. Voss arrived with an escort, her relief cracking the stoic mask as medics prepped for Mia's potential recovery. Tate cracked under the evidence, confessing to a desperate snatch during the drill's noise, intending a border run before dawn. The woods had been his stall, candle lit to calm the crying child. MPs mobilized a recovery team. By noon, they found Mia huddled in an abandoned shed 2 miles out, dehydrated but unharmed, her small form wrapped in a spare jacket from the backpack. The base buzzed with it, radios crackling updates, soldiers pausing mid-drill to salute the helo airlifting her to medical. Voss embraced Kane briefly at the helipad, tears silent on her cheeks. "You and Rex, you brought her back." Graves observed from afar, his nod curt but present, the inquiry's edge softening in the wake of resolution. Yet the ripple persisted. Afternoon briefings dissected the chain breach. Kane's log amended, a commendation memo drafted for his file, balancing the deviation with outcome. Handlers like Ruiz absorbed the lesson, instinct validated, but only through measured pushback. In the ops room, as maps updated with the recovery site, Kane scratched Rex's ears, the dog's head heavy on his boot. The blackout had exposed fractures, not just in protocol, but in the quiet vigilances that held the ranks together. By evening, as the sun dipped behind the evergreens, the base exhaled. Lights strung steady, no simulations to shatter the peace. Kane walked Rex along the perimeter, the fence humming faintly under their steps, the air cooling with pine and earth. One scent, chased in the dark, had mended a tear, but the cost lingered in the command's watchful eyes, a testament to loyalty's dual edge, pulling toward duty and beyond. The afternoon sun slanted through the briefing room's blinds, casting striped shadows across the polished conference table where the inquiry panel convened. Kane sat at attention in the hard-backed chair, his dress uniform crisp despite the day's heat. Rex settled quietly at his feet under the table. The room smelled of stale coffee and fresh printouts, the hum of the air conditioner underscoring the low voices of the assembled officers. Lieutenant Colonel Graves presided from the head, flanked by Major Lynn and a JAG representative, Captain Reyes, whose notebook lay open like an open ledger. Harlan, from CID, observed from the side, his civilian suit a subtle contrast to the ranks of olive drab. "Master Sergeant Kane," Graves began, his tone measured, pointer resting on a stack of reports. "This panel reviews the events of 18:00 hours yesterday during the readiness drill. Your actions, proceeding post-stand-down order, yielded critical evidence in the recovery of dependent Voss. However, they breached chain-of-command protocol. State your rationale for the record." Kane met the colonel's gaze, his voice even, honed from countless debriefs. "Sir, Rex's initial alert at the playground indicated a non-standard anomaly. Per FM 319-4. K9 units maintain operational discretion in exigent child endangerment scenarios. Captain Ellis's on-site authorization extended the track. Deferring at that juncture risked evidence loss in deteriorating conditions. Darkness, wind at 7 knots, potential rain inbound. He cited the manual without flourish, facts anchoring his words like rebar in concrete. Rex shifted slightly, his harness brushing Kane's boot, a silent corroboration amid the scrutiny. Reyes leaned forward, pen poised. "And the colonel's direct order at 20:45 hours? You acknowledged, yet advanced 300 meters to the secondary site." "Affirmative, ma'am," Kane replied. The alert escalated with the fabric match and backpack discovery. "Child safety protocols supersede in life-or-death immediacy." Rex's confirmation was irrefutable, 95% confidence on scent persistence. He paused, the room's clock ticking softly, then added, "Disobedience wasn't the intent, sir. It was necessity." Graves nodded curtly, flipping through photos. The crevice's wax stub under lab light, the backpack's contents laid out sterile on a tray. Mia's drawing magnified to show the unit patch. "Results are undeniable. The suspect, Tate, is in custody. Child recovered unharmed. But precedent matters. Handlers improvising sets a slippery slope. What if every instinct overrides orders?" His eyes held Kane's, not accusatory but probing, the weight of command evident in the faint lines around them. The door opened with a soft click, admitting witnesses in sequence. First Ellis, who saluted and took the stand, his testimony backing Kane. "I requested K9 support per base security standing orders. The dog's track was methodical, no deviation without cause." Then Voss, escorted by an MP, her civilian blouse neat but eyes shadowed from the ordeal. She spoke quietly, hands folded in her lap. "Sergeant Kane and Rex didn't hesitate when others couldn't. Mia's safe because they followed what was right, not just the book." Her words hung, a civilian's voice piercing the military formality, stirring subtle shifts among the panel. Lynn's pen pausing, Reyes glancing at Graves. Ruiz followed, the young private standing ramrod straight. "Sarge taught us protocols, sir, but also judgment. Rex's nose doesn't lie. Pulling back would have meant waiting hours, maybe too late." His deference was clear, yet the loyalty shone through, a junior handler's quiet defense echoing the bond Kane shared with Rex. The dog remained still, his breathing steady, as if attuned to the room's undercurrents, the faint scent of ink and tension. Harlan provided the forensic close, residue matches. Tate's confession tying the candle to a planned concealment, the Blackout exploited for access. Without the K9 escalation, we'd be chasing ghosts. Tate admitted the smoke was to quiet the child. Rex scented it first. The panel absorbed it, slides clicking forward to timelines syncing Kane's track with recovery coordinates. As testimonies wrapped, Graves adjourned for deliberation, the room emptying to the corridor's echo of footsteps. Kane lingered, clipping Rex's lead, the dog's head lifting to meet his. Outside, the base pulsed with midday routine. Humvees rumbling past the motor pool, the distant crack of rifle qualls on the range, pine-scented breeze cutting the asphalt heat. Soldiers nodded as he passed, murmurs trailing. "Heard about the kid. Dog's a legend." The incident weaving into the fabric of base lore, no longer isolated to the woods. Deliberations stretched into late afternoon, the sun dipping toward the foothills, painting the ops building in amber. Kane waited in the handler's ready room, reviewing logs with Ruiz, the space cluttered with gear crates and water bowls. Rex quartered the floor idly, nose tracing faint traces of kibble, his calm a counter to Kane's measured patience. The choice replayed. That moment on the trail, leash in hand, order versus alert. It wasn't rebellion. It was the quiet calculus of service, where loyalty to the mission outranked rigid lines. The summons came via radio. "Kane, report to briefing." He entered to find the panel reconvened, Graves rising. "Master Sergeant, the panel finds your actions justified under exigent circumstances. No formal reprimand. Commendation for canine efficacy added to your file. However, a directive. All handlers to undergo enhanced chain of command training next quarter. Instinct serves, but only within structure." Kane saluted, relief subtle in the set of his shoulders. "Understood, sir." Reyes added, "Your stand highlights a gap. Civilian-dependent protocols need review. CIDs recommending cross-unit drills, incorporating K9 for family sectors." It was reform seed, sparked by one track. The inquiry not punishing but evolving, the institution bending slightly toward the human edges it often overlooked. As the meeting dissolved, Graves approached, voice low. "Well done, Elias. Rex too. But next time, loop the chain sooner. Saves us all the paperwork." A rare half-smile cracked his facade, the colonel's nod a bridge across the hierarchy. Kane returned it, Rex rising to trot beside him, their steps sinking as they exited into the cooling dusk. Word rippled outward that evening. Briefings updated, memos circulated, the Blackout incident logged as a case study for future readiness. Voss visited the kennel annex at shift's end, Mia in her arms, the toddler's small hand extended tentatively toward Rex. The dog sniffed gently, tail wagging once, a moment of unscripted grace amid the wire run's fluorescence. "She's asking about the brave doggy," Voss said, her smile tentative but real. Kane watched, the scene a quiet vindication, loyalty's full circle. In the barracks, as lights dimmed and the base settled under starry skies, Kane scratched Rex's ears, the dog's head heavy on his bunk. The wood's secrets were sealed, Tate's fate in the courts, but the echo lingered. One scent pursued against orders had mended more than a missing child. It had nudged the rigid frame of duty toward conscience, a legacy etched in commendations and revised manuals. Tomorrow's drills would sharpen as before, but with a new undercurrent, the ranks a touch more attuned to the instincts that bound them. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elias Kane reach those who still believe in honor. Weeks passed like the steady turnover of watch shifts at Joint Base Lewis McCord, the evergreen foothills shedding their autumn gold under a crisp Pacific Northwest sky. Kane moved through the routine with the same measured stride, his tactical vest slung over one shoulder as he led Rex to the training fields each dawn. The air carried the sharp bite of frost now, mingling with the earthy scent of dew on the obstacle courses, where Alpha Team ran precision drills under Graves' watchful eye. No mention of the Blackout incident in daily briefs. It had folded into the base's operational fabric, a quiet case study in the handler's manual, rather than a scar on the record. Yet the ripples spread subtly, like wind through the pines. The enhanced chain of command training rolled out in early November, a series of sessions in the ops building where handlers gathered around folding tables, coffee steaming in insulated mugs. Kane facilitated one module, his voice even as he projected slides on canine discretion. Instinct sharpens the edge, but it aligns with the team. Cite the manual, loop your lead. Results follow structure. Ruiz sat in the front row, notebook open, absorbing the blend of procedure and nuance Kane had lived. Other juniors nodded, their questions probing the grey. What if the alert's time-sensitive, like with the kid? Kane's response was direct, no lecture. Document the exigency. Chain bends, but doesn't break. Graves observed from the back once, arms crossed, his presence a silent endorsement. The colonel had signed off on the curriculum himself, incorporating CID feedback, expanded protocols for family sector searches, K-9 integration during civilian drills, even joint exercises with base security to simulate blackout scenarios with dependent variables. It wasn't fanfare. Military reform rarely was. Memos circulated through email chains, updating standing orders without fanfare. The institution adapting in incremental lines of text. Tate's case, sealed in civilian courts off base, underscored the need. Access vulnerabilities in the wire, the human frailties that no fence could fully guard. Kane felt the shift in quieter ways. During a routine perimeter patrol one overcast afternoon, Rex quartered the trail near the housing units, his nose sifting the damp undergrowth. The playground lay ahead, swings idle in the chill wind, the picnic tables scarred from that chaotic evening. Voss was there, pushing Mia on a swing, the toddler's laughter a bright counterpoint to the creak of chains. She spotted them, waving Kane over with a nod of recognition. "Sergeant, we've been meaning to stop by the kennels. Thank you again." He approached, Rex trotting ahead to sniff the air near Mia's boots, the dog keeping a respectful distance until the girl extended a small hand. "Brave doggy," she said, her voice piping clear, fingers brushing Rex's muzzle. The Malinois accepted it gently, tail giving a single wag, his dark eyes soft in the moment. Voss smiled. Her posture relaxed now. The weight of those hours lifted. Therapies helping her process the dark, and the base. They've added family alerts to the drill protocols. Lights-out simulations include kid check-ins now. Kane nodded, hands in his pockets against the breeze. Good, keeps everyone sharp. No need for more. Her gratitude was in the normalcy, Mia's swing arcing steady under the grey sky. As they parted, Voss called back, "Rex is a hero around here. Tell the team we said so." The words lingered, a thread weaving Kane's choice into the community's quiet lore. Back at the annex that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and floodlights hummed to life, Kane logged the patrol in the dim glow of his desk lamp. The space smelled of kibble and leather polish, Rex's run adjacent, the dogs breathing a rhythmic underscore. Ruiz knocked and entered, carrying a stack of fresh manuals, their covers stamped with the updated directives. "Sarge, these just came down. Your inputs credited in the forward. Enhanced K-9 protocols. Lessons from exigent response." He set them down, a grin breaking his usual reserve. Graves mentioned it in staff call, said it sets a standard. Kane flipped open the top copy, scanning the pages, timelines from the incident anonymized, but the essence clear, instinct validated within bounds, loyalty as a force multiplier. Not bad, Private. Read it cover to cover. Teaches more than drills. Ruiz saluted informally, exiting with a nod, his steps carrying a newfound confidence. Mentorship flowed that way, unspoken, from one handler's stand to the next generation's steadiness. The transformation crystallized during the quarterly readiness review, held in the main auditorium under high ceilings and the faint echo of polished floors. Graves addressed the full group, his voice carrying over the rows of seated personnel, Rex among the K-9 pairs lined at the front. "Discipline holds us, but judgment tempers it. Recent updates reflect that. Our edge isn't just in formation, but in the choices that protect all within the wire." His gaze settled on Kane briefly, a nod acknowledging the symbol, not a maverick, but a measure of moral strength, his integrity etching quiet reform into the ranks. As the review ended, soldiers filed out into the twilight, boots thudding in unison, the air crisp with the promise of winter rain. Kane walked Rex back to quarters, the fence lights flickering on one by one, casting long shadows across the paths. The base sprawled as ever, barracks aglow, Humvees parked in neat rows, the distant hum of generators a constant pulse. One act of defiance, born of a dog's unerring nose and a handler's conscience, had steadied the system against its own rigid lines. Loyalty, it turned out, wasn't blind obedience, but the courage to align instinct with honor, rippling through careers and commands long after the blackout faded. In the quiet of the kennel, as Kane latched Rex's run for the night, the dog's head rested against the wire, eyes meeting his in that wordless bond. The candle's smoke was memory now, but its lesson endured. In the disciplined heart of the ranks, conscience illuminated what orders alone could not. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of a toddler disappeared during the blackout, and the SEAL's dog detected a candle smoke. See you in the next one.